بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجبين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته وانتهج نهجه إلى يوم الدين. تركنا المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك وبعد. So just as the month of Ramadan, the blessed month of Ramadan is winding down and we are in our last 2 days or so or less, we are also winding down with our reading of Al-Fath al-Rabbani al-Rabbani Shaykh Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani radiallahu anhu. And we have reached the 59th discourse out of 62. And as we have seen from throughout our readings, several themes have emerged from these discourses. The Shaykh emphasizes the importance of inner fortitude and inner light, and that as a key to the illumination of the limbs. And so the inner then is a key to the outer. And without that, the outer then just becomes an empty shell, not the lub, as he has mentioned many, many times. And when the inner then, or the batin, is not rectified, is not muzakka, is not purified, then we will see all of these infractions or all of these transgressions that appear from the outer. And the key to rectification of this is the illumination of the inner. So how does one go about doing that? Well, the Shaykh mentions a few things. Amongst them is, as we saw in the last session, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that even when we are remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should remember Allah, for Allah, by Allah, with Allah. And when we ask, we should ask not to fulfill our personal requests, right? And treat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like our sort of personal wishing well or ATM, but rather as a manifestation of our ubudiyyah, a manifestation of our servitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then it becomes mukh al-ibadah. Then it becomes the fountainhead of worship, to supplicate in this particular way. So we're going to go to the 59th discourse and read some of the excerpts from it that we have selected, beginning from the top. يقول الشيخ محي الدين عبد القادر الجيلاني رضي الله عنه ورحمه الله: كلام الطامع لا يخلو من رجة ومداهنة، لا يمكنه المحاقة، يكون كلامه قشرا فارغا لا لب فيه، صورة بلا معنى. الطامع فارغ كالطمع، لأن حروف الطمع كلها فارغة، الطاء والميم والعين. يا عباد الله عز وجل اصدقوا وقد أفلحتم. الصادق همته عالية في السماء لا يضره قول قائل إن الله عز وجل غالب على أمري، إذا أرادك لأمر هيأك له. كلام جرى من سيء الأدب، وهذا جواب صدق أحوالكم تنطقني، وكذبكم يسكتني، على قدر ما تشترون أبيعكم. So his introduction, he says, the speech of one who is greedy with ambition, that's one way to translate it, tama. I've seen it also translated as to covet something, covetousness. And it is a type of greed, of to be ambitious not in the positive sense I think that many of us tend to think of it today, and to be ambitious and to try to achieve things, but to covet that which others possess. So it's a type of greed or ambition or covetousness, to seek out what others possess and want it for yourself, because you think you are entitled to it, I would also add. So he said, the speech of someone like this is not free from confusion and dissimulation. He is incapable of presenting the truth. His speech is an empty shell with no kernel, lub, inside it, just outer form with no inner content. One who is greedily ambitious, tama', is empty like greedy ambition, tama' itself. And here he's talking from a linguistic sense, because all of the consonant letters in the Arabic word tama' are empty, the ta, the mim, and the ayn. So they all have little, ta, mim, ayn, have little circles in them. So this is what he means by the emptiness, drawing the comparison to the actual letters, the Arabic letters themselves. He says, O servants of Allah, be truthful and you will prosper. The aspiration of the truthful person, the Sadiq, rises sky high. He is not badly affected by anything anyone may say. Allah is in control of his affairs. If he wants him for some business, he will make him ready for it. He will prepare him for it. This is another theme that we saw also. If you are covetous of something that someone else possesses, well, if you were meant for that thing, Allah is going to put you in that direction, prepare you for it. Something that was said arose from bad manners, and this is the response to it. The honesty of your spiritual states will induce me to speak, while your dishonesty will make me fall silent. To the extent that you will buy, I am selling. Right? And here the Shaykh is speaking about himself, and that also knowledge transmission, whether it be from, and we've talked about the three modes more or less in the tradition of knowledge transmission, whether it be written transmission, or whether it be oral transmission, mushafaha, like speaking to one another, or whether it be oral with the A-U-R-A-A, from Bo'ora. So this is the transmission of spiritual states, the transmission of ahwal. In all three, the recipient state, the state of the recipient, the one who's going to receive the knowledge, is just as important, if not more important, than the state of the one who is transmitting it. So if the one who is receiving is not in a state of ista'dad, right, a state of ready to receive that, then it will just come and it will not really resonate. It will kind of just bounce off. And also, if the one who is transmitting senses within the one who is receiving is not quite ready for it, like the Shaykh is saying here, he will fall silent, right? And sometimes the transmission itself can be in the silence as well. We should not lose sight of that. How many of the times that I can at least speak for myself personally, that I see from the silence of my teachers in certain situations. So we know that choosing to remain silent, right, which in Arabic is called as-samt, it is actually one of the four foundations of spirituality, or of suluk, finding a path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as articulated by many of the ulama, including Shaykh Al-Akbar al-Muhyiddin ibn Arabi. And last year we did a series in Ramadan, during Ramadan, about these four particular things. So samt, silence, is one of them. Al-Jua, or choosing to refrain from food, is one of them. Al-Uzla, which is choosing to refrain from people, is one of them. And then the fourth one, choosing to refrain from sleep. In other words, dedicating one's time to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not just seeking out creature comforts. So they said, he called these the pinnacles or the foundations of al-Abdad, right? And we said that Abdad is one of the types of awliya. So with samt, then also to choose to remain silent, not just mere sukut. Sukut is to be just silent. And not al-khars, which is to be compelled to be silent, but samt, an intention to be silent, then that means that in this situation, the wise thing to do is to remain silent. And as we said, there's a silence, and we've talked about this if those are interested, you'll find them on the Sabil channel. The one who remains silent could be a silence of speech, but it can also be a silence of state, a silence of heart. And in the modern world, the emphasis is often upon haraka, movement, activism. Do something. Don't just stand there. Do something. Right. That's kind of the echoing of the modern sentiment, that always there has to be this call to action. Don't just let things happen, so forth. But we find with the spiritual masters like Ibn Atha al-Sakandari, he will say something like, the aqil is the one, when he wakes up or she wakes up, says, what will Allah do with me? And then the impetuous one will be the one who, when they wake up, say, what will I do today? And for the uninitiated, or for those who are not familiar with the spiritual sciences, they'll read something like that and say, oh, that sounds very fatalistic. All these Sufis and spiritual Muslims, all they care about is themselves, and they just let the world go to hell, and they don't really care how things are going. And they're just kind of into their own personal worship, and they want to go hide in the cave and be isolated from everybody and just let the world disintegrate before their very eyes. And nothing could be further from the truth. They are active, but active when, as the Shaykh says, one of the things that we saw, when they feel that Allah has prepared them properly, and then they are active with, not with their nafs, not with their hawa, not with their personal inclination, but by the will and by the tawfiq and by the impetus coming from only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that activism that they have will be that much more effective. And we see that also in terms of speech. So someone who's merely charismatic and can mesmerize people with their speech. And even the Prophet ﷺ says, وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْبَيَانِ لَسِحْرًا. From the bayan, from the eloquence, is a type of magic, yes. But can that truly penetrate the heart? Much of speech today is not penetrating the heart, that what people talk about, but it's appealing to the lowest common denominator of humanity, namely the nafs, the nufus. The rise of genres like erotica and of the sensual aspects of our speech is what people, that's where you find the most people interested and the most followers and those who are listening in and want to hear more about it, because it's appearing to the lowest common denominator. But that speech, al-qawl al-haq wal-qawl al-thabit, right? Qawl al-haq, coming from the haq, coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, via the conduits that He chooses from His awliya, wal-qawl al-thabit, and that which is firm, that which is on firm ground, that which is rooted, is not as appealing, right? Because it doesn't appeal to the nafs. In fact, the nafs is offended by it. The nafs wants to run away from it because it kind of reminds it of where it's at and what it has to do. And the nafs, you can think of it as this spoiled little child that only wants what it wants, and it doesn't want to have discipline, and it doesn't want to sacrifice, and it doesn't want to change its ways. So this is the kind of the parable of the nafs, the parable of the spirit, of the ruh, of that which is the best part of humanity. No, it seeks that which is beautiful, it seeks that which is good, it seeks that which is right, it seeks that which is true. وَلَوْ عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ, right? Where we were commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to seek the truth and to say the truth, even if it is against ourselves, right? Because the principle of truth, the principle of haqq, takes precedence over our personal comfort and our personal inclinations. And this is the theme that the Shaykh has been stressing throughout. So it's one thing to kind of say, oh, I don't do that, I don't follow my personal inclinations, but then your actions betray that sentiment because your heart is not in a place where you can actually do that. And so the discourse of the Shaykh then is to say, get it right in here, and you'll find that your actions then will confirm that sentiment, and confirm it in a way without you even being perhaps aware of it, right? Because now you're tafna an nafsik, right? You're in a state of fana, you're in a state of exclusion of seeing yourself, right? And of being cognizant of the acts that you do, so that you may attach merit to it and then be affiliated with it, and then enter in a state of ujb, right? Enter in a state of being contented and self-deluded with the things that you do. But rather, if you see it as the act of God, then it's a whole different thing. And this is what Ibn Atha al-Sakandari in some of the Hikam also mentioned, that the Zuhad is a mudihu qabadu, wal-arifun is a mudihu farihu. That the Zuhad, those who are actively renouncing the dunya and say, no, I don't want that, I don't want this, astaghfirullah, I'm staying away from this, I'm living a minimalist lifestyle, and they're aware that they're doing that. So when they are praised, then this causes them in qabd, right? It causes them to feel constricted because they feel like, oh, they're talking about me, I don't want any me in the equation. Whereas al-arifun, there's no me to begin with. So when they hear madah, or they're complimented about something, or they're praised about something, they don't attach the praise to themselves. They see that it's actually the praise of Allah. Allah is being praised. And the one who is doing the praising is also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because at that maqam, al-khalq aqlamul haqq. The creation then is the pens of the haqq. So the one doing the praising is God, and the one receiving the praise is God. So it's Allah praising himself. And really the whole universe, that's what, if you had to put it in a single phrase, it's Allah praising himself. That's what the universe is. And those who could see that, then they become witnesses to that. That's why we call it mushahada, witnessing. Ta'budullah ka'annaka tara. So if you see Allah, that means you really don't see anything else, right? That means you become fani, you become oblivious to anything else. And there's two ways of being oblivious. There's actually the oblivious that they call halat al-fana, which is to be completely not even aware of others around you, and sometimes this can lead to a situation of a type of very intense spiritual state, and a person who remains in this particular state can't really be an example for others because they're not in a position to lead. And then the other type of fana, yu'aqibuhu baqa. Yu'aqibuhu baqa, that means baqa comes afterward. That means no, you're aware, but at the same time your heart is only attached with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's called baqa. You see the existence of things by the existence of God. Whereas in the first state, you don't see the existence of things, you only see the existence of Allah, and that's the only true existence, which is true in both states. But in the second one, in baqa, in this maqam, then you see the existence of Allah, and you see the existence of other things by the existence of Allah, and not as independent. And this is the kamal, right? Hada akmal. This is more complete. So, and I don't mean to talk about that too much. I don't want people to get too caught up with that and enamored with it, and what does that mean, and how do we get to that? And we practice the deen. That's what we want to do. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the great masters have spoken about things like this, and some of them have talked about their experiences, and if Allah avails us of something of that, then we say alhamdulillah. And if he does not, and some people maybe in their whole life will never feel a state like that, then that's okay too. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the state even right in the moment before death, because that's what has been written for you. And some will certainly achieve it by in the afterlife. And so everyone has their nasib, as the Shaykh says. No one's going to take the aqsam of somebody else. No one's going to take the allotment of somebody else. That which is going to be allotted to you is coming to you, whether you desire it or not. And that which is never meant to come to you is not going to come to you, whether you desire it or not. So let's move on. So I'm going to move down a little bit. So he talks a little bit about love and divine love in a section down here. And he begins with the verse, قال الله عز وجل ما جعل الله لرجل من قلبين في جوفه قلب يحب الخالق والخلق لا يصح قلب يكون فيه الدنيا والآخرة لا يصح إذا كان القلب للخالق والوجه إلى الخلق يجوز لفت إلى الخلق نظرا في مصالحهم ورحمة لهم يجوز للجاهل بالله عز وجل أن يرائي وينافق والعالم به لا يفعل ذلك الأحمق يعصي الله عز وجل والعاقل يطيعه الحريص على جمع الدنيا يرائي وينافق والقصير الأمل لا يفعل ذلك المؤمن يتقرب إلى الله عز وجل بأداء الفرائض ويتحبب إليه بالنوافل ولله عباد لا نوافل لهم بل يأتون بالفرائض ثم يفعلون النوافل ويقولون هذه فرائض علينا لأجل إقدارنا عليها اشتغالنا بالعبادة أبد الدهر فرض علينا لا يردون أنفسهم نافلة في الجملة أولياء الله عز وجل لهم منبه ينبههم ومعلم يعلمهم يهيئ الحق عز وجل لهم أسباب التعلم قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لو أن المؤمن على قلة جبل لقيد الله له عالم يعلمه. So let's move to that. This is page 379 for those who are following. As Allah has said, Allah has not assigned to any man two hearts within his body. Right? And that's the nature of the spiritual heart, the qalb. So yes, there's a connection between the physical cardiac heart and the spiritual heart, and that it's, the heart is a single organ. You have two lungs, you have two kidneys, you have two ears, you have two eyes. So many of the things of our organs come in pairs, but the heart certainly not. And the heart then is supposed to be in tune towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can't actually have this bifurcation of the spiritual heart where it's looking this way and it's looking that way at the same time. Hence, the word qalb means at-taqallub, right? So taqallub means going back and forth because most hearts are back and forth. And so that's what gives the qalb its name, but also what gives it its anxiety and its worry and its trepidation, right? So the desired state is a stillness of the heart, and the stillness, the spiritual stillness of the heart can only be achieved via a singular focus upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's no such thing really as multitasking or multi-focusing with the heart. So you have a singular focus, and out of that singular focus, all of these fruits can come about, certainly, as the Shaykh describes here. So he says, a heart that loves both the Creator and creatures is unsound. And a heart that contains both this world and the hereafter is unsound. If the heart belongs to the Creator and the face is turned toward creatures, this is permissible. What does it mean by that? So it means inside, it's only about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But part of your etiquette, part of your adab is you are still amongst the khalq, right? Look at the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, دائم البشر, right? ولكن متطاول الأحزان أو دائم الأحزان. So دائم البشر means he is smiling and he is with the khalq and presenting them with ease and facilitation. But inside al-ahzan, not sadness, but contemplation, penetrative, deep, profound connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And someone who is in that state internally can't also have that same deep, penetrative, profound connection with people. It just won't work because they're opposites. Al-khalq is fani. Creatures are temporary and creatures are fickle, and creatures can never be pleased, and they only see a certain side of you, and they only see the side of you that Allah allows them to see. If Allah allows them to see the good side of you and he makes satr, right, and he conceals the bad side of you, then don't like you. And if Allah chooses to do the opposite, if they see the bad side of you and Allah conceals the good side of you, then they won't like you. But that doesn't change your place with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So al-qana'a, right, to be contented with Allah's knowledge of you. So you cannot be contented with Allah's knowledge of you and with people's knowledge of you at the same time because they're so different. They're mutually exclusive. They can't be at the same time. So that's why he said, if the face is turned toward creatures, al-wajh, yani you're outward, but what is the reason? As he mentions here, he said this is permissible. It's permissible to direct one's attention toward creatures in order to look after their best interests out of compassion for them because you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what Allah does for them. And so you want your heart to be with the one that you are focused on and the one that you love, namely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how He sees His creatures. And so you should also see them with this divine prism, right, of compassion and looking out for the best interest and not wanting to see any harm come to them. And if you're in a position to bring them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bring them to a greater understanding of the deen, then that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set up for you, right? If those meanings are in your heart. But if your approach to them is internally, that is, that I want to bring them down and I have to show that I'm better than they are, and it gives me sort of solace in my heart knowing that I'm a little bit better than they are and I have more than what they have. These are all maladies of the heart, right? And those maladies of the heart are a direct result of your connection to al-Fani, right? Your connection to that which is temporal and not permanent and not lasting and not everlasting. But if your connection is to the everlasting, your ta'alluq, right, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to creatures, then the fickleness of creation is not going to it's not going to change your state. It's not going to get you down. And this is what Zarruq talked about in Usul al-Tariqa, and he said one of the 5 usul is to not be concerned, to be indifferent to the khalq fil iqbal wal idbar. So whether they have iqbal upon you, whether they're approaching you and they like you and they want you to do these things for them and they're interested in you, or idbar, they turn their backs on you and they're not very interested in you. That's not the important thing. The important thing is, where are you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with you? So then he says, one who is in ignorance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may put on a show and act hypocritically, but one who has knowledge of Him, alimu bihi, will not behave like this. The stupid fool may disobey Allah, but the intelligent person will obey Him. One who is eager to amass worldly things may put on a show and behave hypocritically, but one who has few expectations will not act in this fashion. The believer, then, the mu'min, draws close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by performing the obligatory religious duties, the fara'id, and shows his love for Him through supererogatory acts of devotion, or nawafil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has some servants from whom there is no such thing as supererogatory devotions. This was the state of the Sahaba. The Sahaba, especially kibar al-Sahaba, right? The senior Sahaba like Abu Bakr and Umar wa Uthman wa Ali wa Talha wa Zubair and Mu'adh ibn Jabal wa Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas and many others, of Sayyidina Bilal ibn Rabah. They didn't say, oh, Ya Rasulullah, is this fard or is this sunnah? Like, can we skip it or not skip it? Whatever they saw the Prophet ﷺ do, they would do. And for many of them, that even included the mannerisms and the things that he liked to eat. Anas ibn Malik said, I used to see the Prophet ﷺ search out the dubba, the gourd, like a type of squash in the stew. And so I did the same thing, right? Because it seemed like he liked it, so I liked it as well. They remarked that Abdullah ibn Umar, when he would be going to Hajj, he would be on his mountain. He went off to a small hilly place, came back, and they said, why did you go over there and come back this way? And he said, I don't have a reason except that I saw the Prophet ﷺ do the same thing when I went to Hajj with him, and he did that and he came this way. This was their love for the Prophet ﷺ. So even what we thought would be adat, right, just habitual things that the Prophet ﷺ did, they turned into ibadat. So if you follow it with the intention that I'm doing it because the Prophet ﷺ is doing it or did it, then it becomes a ibadah instead of just a aada. And so that means also the nawafil, the things that are supererogatory or optional, sometimes we call them, or voluntary as we call them, for them they see them as the same as the fara'id. Like, how could I not do it? If I have the opportunity and I have the time and so forth. So notice he said, has some servants from whom there is no such thing as supererogatory devotions. Not all of them, some will feel that, that maqam. They discharge the obligatory duties, then perform those that are, strictly speaking, supererogatory, saying these are obligatory duties for us by virtue of the fact that we are capable of doing them. That we should be preoccupied with worshipful service, ibadah, always and forever, is compulsory for us. they do not consider any act of devotion as supererogatory as far as they themselves are concerned. And obviously, this is also a certain person who has the time and the faragh, right? The absence of other things to keep them busy or other responsibilities to do that. And in pre-modern Islam, I think the Ummah, there are quite a number of people who are like that. You had such people during the days of the Prophet ﷺ also, Ahl al-Suffah, right? The people of the bench who had no home, had no abode, and had really no occupation except to be with the Prophet ﷺ and emulate him and learn from him and record everything that he said. Amongst those people was Abu Hurairah, who was the most prolific hadith narrator. And he had no occupation except to sit with the Prophet ﷺ and also sit with his senior companions and record everything that he could that they knew about the Prophet ﷺ. And so that was something considered vital and important in the early days of the Ummah, and certainly probably up until modernity kind of beset us some 200 or 300 years ago. But nowadays, people just see that as kind of waste of time and as folly, and to have people who are just dedicated to ibadah and seeking the best from Allah and supplicating on others' behalf. Certainly not something that everybody should be doing, but there was kind of a small minority that would be doing that. And obviously, we had also these endowments. We had these al-Qadir that were kind of like the zawaya, and similar to like a travel lodge. People would be able to go there. Azhar in Egypt, the people who used to more or less reside in Azhar and just spend their life there, they were called al-Mujawirun. Al-Mujawirun. And the Mujawir is the one who is keeping company or staying close by to something. And some of the historians like al-Maqrizi and Ali ibn Mubarak fi al-Khitat, both of them, one was during the Mamluk age, one was during the Ottoman age, but they both made similar remarks that the Mujawirun and the blessing of Al-Azhar, and they said that it was the most blessed place after the holy sacred masajid of Mecca and Medina and Masjid al-Aqsa, because of the people who are learning and the people who are studying and the people who are making dhikr and the people who are dedicating their lives to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So maybe those are the people that he's talking about here. He says, then the saints, the awliya of Allah, have an awakener to awaken them and a teacher to teach them. The Lord of Truth, Al-Haq Azza wa Jal, equips them with the means to acquire knowledge. As the Prophet ﷺ has said, even if the believer were to be on a mountain peak, Allah will provide him with a teacher to teach him. Do not borrow the words of the righteous, the Salihun, and then utter them pretending that they are your own. The borrowing will not be concealed. You must clothe yourself from what belongs to you, not from something borrowed. Plant the cotton with your own hand, water it with your own hand, and cultivate it with your own effort. Then weave it, sew it, and wear it. Do not be happy with someone else's property and someone else's clothes. If you take another person's words and utter them pretending they are your own, the hearts of the righteous will despise you. If you have no deed to show for yourself, you have nothing to say. The crux of the whole matter is actual practice. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, enter the garden of paradise because of what you used to do. You must exert yourselves to obtain experience, ma'rifah of the Lord of Truth, for it is kept hidden with him and resides with his qadar, his destiny, his power, his qudra, and his knowledge, his ilm. It is total annihilation or fana, as we've said, in his workings, his af'al, and his affairs. So what is he talking about here? So if one is sincere enough, then the things that you seek and the means by the things that which you to seek them will be made available to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at a time and at a manner that is consistent with his pre-eternal knowledge of you. It will happen, have no doubt about it. Just We don't know when, we don't know how, but the important thing is not to just sit around waiting, but it's to avail yourself of the many blessings that can be found when you are in a state of yearning, right? When you're what they call al-muttar, right? When you يجيب دعاء المضطر إذا دعاه, who is the one who will answer the dua, the supplication of the yearning one when he asks or when he supplicates. So here, yearning means that you really, really are sincere about it and really want it and really realize that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can grant it to you. And this is the most powerful type of dua. There are certain states that put you in a very powerful position for your dua to be answered. One of them is being al-muttar. Al-muttar is the one who's yearning, and the one who sees is fani, like this word we used again, is fani an al-asbab, and is the one who doesn't see the intermediate causes. He may avail himself, or she may avail herself of those intermediate causes, as is the etiquette and the comportment with Allah, but there's a fana about, they don't see them as having any efficacy of their own. They're not the ones that are going to do it, right? You're not going to find tuma'nina, as we said the other day. You're not going to find ease and solace with as many as intermediate causes as you have around you. So if you're in the middle of the ocean and you have a luxury yacht with a full staff and a full complement and navigational charts and GPS, and you're kind of in the middle of the Pacific somewhere, you'll feel like, okay, it's not that bad, but we have everything that we need to get home. Or if you're in the same middle of the same Pacific and you're on a life raft that is losing air and you see the sharks circling around you, and then you feel muttar, then you feel like, oh, I got nothing except to ask Allah. Well, that situation is no different than the one who's in the yacht, because you have nothing except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the Shaykh here, I think, saying that the saint, the awliya, have an awakener to awaken them, right? And ittirar is one of the sifat of the awliya, this constant sense of, I only have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I don't have anything else. So then he equips them. And then he mentions the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he says something interesting: do not borrow the words of the Salihin and then utter pretending them that they are your own. In Kutub al-Qawm, right, the books of the Sufi masters, they say that ilm is not what you read in books and then transmit after that. Technically, they don't consider that to be knowledge. Knowledge for them is that which you, as he says here, you planted and cultivated with your own effort, and then you wove it with your own effort, and you sewed it, and then you put it on, and it's yours. So it's about experiential knowledge, right? That's what ilm is, or ma'rifah. Things that came through your spiritual experiences, things that came through your ibadah, right? Things that came through your tilawat al-Quran. Allah gives you some insight about a verse or something, or a hadith, or there was a mashhad, right? Something that you saw or something that you were exposed to, and then you had certain insights about it, then they call that ilm. Otherwise, what he's talking about here is borrowed. So it's not of the adab, it's not of the etiquette to say, or to pretend that it's yours, right? That you uttered it and that you came up with it, and then not ascribe it to the one who actually said it, right? So these are all Shaykh Abd al-Jilani's words, they're not our words, and we're just reading them and trying to understand them. But you can see that these words are his, right? And when they're not his, he says, Bayazid al-Bistami, Abu Yazid said this, or Fudayl ibn Iyad said this, or Imam Junayd said this. But then if he doesn't say or ascribe it to someone, then you can rest assured it's his, and it's from his own understanding. And this is also another way of transmission. And just as the words of the Quran and Sunnah are applicable and are the transmission themselves of the words of Allah and what Allah desires from us, the words of the people who embody the Quran and Sunnah after that also carry some weight. We're not going to say the same weight. We're not going to say that Shaykh Abd al-Jilani's words are the same as the Prophet's words. Like, we don't say that. But we do say that if he's embodying the meanings of the Quran and the Sunnah, and he's living them, right, and he's he's soaked them and he's imbibed them, and they kind of penetrate every fiber of his being, then we can expect the things that he says are going to be true to the sentiment and the meanings and the objective of the Quran and Sunnah. How do we know when they're not? When clearly they violate the Quran and Sunnah. Then we could say no. Were there some of the Sufis who said something that seemed very contradictory to Quran and Sunnah? Certainly. And sometimes their words are ascribed that way. But they say that the adab with awliya that we tend to consider to be of this caliber, like Shaykh Abd al-Jilani, like Muhyiddin al-Arabi and others, is that their words are not to be taken literally. They're to be taken in a way figuratively, because when you are trying to put into words something that can only be truly understood via experience, then it's going to come out in a way that's going to be difficult to understand. That's why they say al-ibaratu jafa. So the ibara, trying to put it into words, articulate something that you can only have experience, it's going to come out as dry and not true to the meaning. Like imagine you tasted honey, the best honey, like the honey from Wadi Dawaan in Yemen, and you tried to describe the taste to somebody who's never tasted honey in their life. You can write paragraphs, go write a thesis statement about it, about how it tastes. You're not going to be able to convey properly exactly how that honey tastes. The only way it can be conveyed if that person also that you're trying to convey the message to tastes some of that honey. Then if you write even in poetic language, or let's say cipher, which was many of the masters did. They wrote in a language that was almost like a cipher, like you can't understand it. It can only be understood by someone who's actually been there themselves. And so then when you write it that way, they know exactly what you're talking about because they've tasted it. And that's why they say, طعام الرجال يضر بالأطفال. Sometimes adult food, you can't feed it to a baby. You can't feed it to the infant because they'll get sick. And so in the same vein, some of the words of these masters, you can't feed it to everybody because they're not quite ready for it. Shaykh Abd al-Jilani, for the most part, his discourses that we can see are not like that. They're actually meant for atfal too. They're meant for even the uninitiated and those who don't even have kind of a strong commitment to Islam. And that's why many people came and made tawbah to him. Someone else like the books of Ibn Arabi are not like that. They're for the most part are not to be read except by someone who has kind of had a little bit of a taste of that, or they're read with someone who's had a taste of that and then can interpret the words in a manner that at least can be appreciated, if not fully understood and comprehended and actualized. So, alhamdulillah. So there's one last thing that, like a very nice kind of story. We're a little bit out of time, but I just want to read this excerpt to you. On page 383, beginning, I believe. Actually, let's start with the last paragraph on 382. He says, he's talking about ubudiyya, right? Servitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, when a person's servitude or ubudiyya and direct experience, ma'rifah, as we've just been talking about, are fully realized, he will say neither let me see or do not let me see. Neither give me nor do not give me. He becomes non-existent, fani, wholly absorbed, mustaghriq. This is why one of those who have attained to this station, Maqam, says, what do I care about me? Well spoken indeed, right? Because now they're even fani, their own desires and what they want become non-existent. They don't even really have desires except that what Allah desires. I am his slave, his abd, and the slave in his master's company has neither choice nor will of his own. A man once bought a slave, a mamluk, back when there was, in the pre-modern world, there was slavery. And that slave happened to be one of the people of religion, of the deen, and was righteous, andu salah. O slave, the man said to him, what would you like to eat? His owner. He said, whatever you give me to eat. He said, what kind of clothes would you like to wear? He said, whatever you give me to wear. Where would you like to lodge in my house? Whatever place you lodge me. What jobs would you prefer to work at? Whatever you order me to do. The man, the one who bought him, then burst into tears as he said, what a blessing would be for me if I could be with my Lord as you are with me. O my master, said the slave, does the servant, Abd, in the company of his master, his Sayyid, have any will, irada, or choice, ikhtiyar, of his own? Then the master said to him, you are a free man, into hur, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he emancipated him right at that moment. And I would like you to stay with me so that I may serve you with my person and my property. So the master became the slave. So the man who originally bought that person, now he's serving the one that he bought. Why? Because he saw the ubudiyya, he had an ishara, and the signal to him was, this is how I should be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this person who was a slave was already that way with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, khalas, I find myself into servitude, then I will serve the person that has my neck, as it were, figuratively, and serve them in that manner. And then Allah elevated him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated him and made him the master. And then the one that who was the master then became the servant. And this is how it works with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the khalq. If you make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala your master and your sayyid and your sovereign, then the khalq will be at your service. And you will never be subservient to them. You may serve them, but not subservient to them. Serve them in that you're looking for their maslahah, you're looking for their interest. This is what the Arabs meant when they said, Sayyid al-Qawm khadimuhum. The leader of the people is the one who serves them, right? Serve them of your own volition, right? Serving their interest, not subservient to them in maqam, right? Allah will elevate you, and then the khalq, yusakhir al-khalqu lak, right? And then the khalq will be at your disposal. Inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.